I was wrong about Floodgates. Wait, what was the original take?
So here's a question for you guys. Why did Nichiria Rosewhip get banned, but Last Warrior from Another Planet is A-okay at 3? What makes...
Because Konami are inconsistent with their ban list. It is a marketing tool, and it is not a game balance game balancing tool. That's why. It's a marketing tool.
this one bannable, and yet this one is allowed to be freed from its decade-long prison.
Oh my god,
and when you look at these cards side by side,
sure,
one of these is clearly more egregious
tour
than the other one. But this change was made on the same ban list, so what gives? So to find out, I did what any morally questionable card player would do, and I decided to give Floodgates a go. And by embracing...
We can't self-report as morally questionable, man. Come on. That's, this might not age well. Know the work rules. Oh, you're anti-meta, Floodgates. Hello, Konami, inappropriate. Okay, to be fair, not to explain our Mastodo memes, but easily accessible Floodgates in every single deck that are part of all of your spreadsheet combo end boards isn't the same as like unsearchable one-offs, right? You know, just saying. Again, not defending Floodgates, but just saying.
This evil, maybe I can discover something that I didn't really see before. And to be honest, I think my original stance on Floodgates was unfair and even wrong. So let's talk about how that was even possible. And so we have a baseline. Let's start with what my original stance on Floodgates actually was. And originally I felt they were just bad for the game. The whole point of a Floodgate is to reduce the amount of interactions in the game to 0, or at least as close.
Oh, the SpongeBob memes really top this off. So he was wrong about Floodgates, which means he's going to pivot into saying Floodgates are good and healthy, right? That's what's happening here. Oof. Ladies and gentlemen, press F to pay respects. 07, we've lost another one. But that's it. He's cancelled. He's cancelled.
The 0 as you can get. And in my head, a healthy game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one where both players have plenty of interaction on both players' turns.
Red eye support, man.
So naturally, Floodgate stands directly
Stop
in
with the
opposition of this philosophy.
The SpongeBob
but
memes.
Recently, Joshua Schmidt made a discussion video that's honestly not related at all to this topic, but it did make me question my view of what healthy Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually is. Because to him, a healthy game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't actually have anything to do with the amount of interactions that both players have on either turn. He looks at it more like it's a puzzle game, where the going first player is the person who's creating a puzzle, and the going second player is the person who has to solve the puzzle. And honestly, this is a comparison that I haven't heard before in this game, but it really resonated with me. Normally people compare Yu-Gi-Oh! To fast-paced fighting games, which is fine, I do agree with that. But honestly, the puzzle game philosophy feels more in line with how the game actually plays in my experience. Calling Yu-Gi-Oh! A puzzle game is low-key a base take. And honestly...
Is that a real translator?
Honestly, I do agree with Josh's perspective. Some of the best games that I've personally played so far are the kind of games where it's engine versus engine. And
when you add the newest meta engine to your shitty pet deck, Hydrogen Bomb plus Coughing Baby. Okay, these memes are getting very distracting. Anyway, so if a healthy game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is solving a puzzle and weaving through the intricacies of a board that's been made, how were we wrong about Floodgates? This is going to be a crazy reveal.
Really, anyone could come out on top. And this philosophy shift from a game about everyone having interactions to this is a puzzle game started to shift my feelings about certain aspects of Yu-Gi-Oh! In general. So with this fresh perspective, I wanted to revisit one of the most highly debated card types in this game, Floodgates, and look at them through the lens of not how many interactions it promotes, but instead as a puzzle piece that needs to be solved by the opponent. And the first step is actually building the deck that was the boogeyman for the first week of the ban list announcement, Kashtira Primite.
Arise Heart kisses his dad on the lips. Wait, is that my deck list? I think I probably just made something like looks exactly like this
with Metamorphosis in there. And at a glance, honestly, this deck does...
Can I just say, by the way, like, it just, you know, randomly came into my... The thumbnail for that video was so good, okay? You need to be at least 30 years old to get the reference, but it was... crazy thumbnail.
Kind of cool. It seems like a mid-rangey kind of deck with a lot of ways to recur itself. And if you draw the Metamorphosis, you can turn it into one of 2 Floodgates. It's not just Last Warrior from Another Planet Turbo. There's also this neat little interaction where if you Lordly load and then use Metamorphosis into Last Warrior from Another Planet, his effect to blow up your own board won't activate, so you get to keep your board and keep the Floodgate.
Dude, that's so
cool. But after
cool.
playing this deck for multiple days, I kind of came to the conclusion that Floodgates are just bad. And I don't mean bad for the game, I just mean like legitimately not great Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Which to me is weird because when you see Floodgates discussed online, they're talked about like this skill-less auto-win button. But that really ended up not being the case for me overall. Like if I actually got the Last Warrior from Another Planet, half the time the opponent was just hitting it with an Imperm or a Droplet, turning it into basically a meatball. Or if Kashira Risehard didn't get outed, people would still be able to play around it and produce a threat. It wasn't just locking people out of the game.
Oof, we're not really gonna go down the line of logic of, well, they lose to answers, right? I should have just solved the puzzle when my opponent flipped anti-spell. Like, yeah, like what?
Pretty much every time I ended on just Floodgates, the opponent would still be able to produce a threat that my Public Interruption just couldn't solve. And don't get me wrong, are there games where you just build your end board and the opponent scoops? Yeah, absolutely. But that's not actually the norm when playing this deck. And when looking at this game through the lens of a puzzle game, the weaknesses of Floodgates just becomes a lot more pronounced. Imagine a deck like Cool Tune as a puzzle. Because it's such a layered...
The annoying thing about Floodgates isn't even necessarily their win rates. Like, yeah, you can absolutely play against like some Floodgate turbo deck that just doesn't produce enough offense. You're able to grind out of it and win. The point is that it wasn't a fun game, right? You don't feel rewarded. You don't feel satisfied because you won a game against a Floodgate. You just sort of like had 15 minutes of your time occupied and played a non-game that didn't really... wasn't probably fun for you, and it wasn't fun for your opponent probably. Like, so it's just like a nothing thing. And I guess I'll like summarize the reason why I think Floodgates exist and why they have to be around like later in the video, because I've talked about it multiple times. But just from a game design perspective, outside of like, you know, the marketing reasons why Floodgates exist, I don't know how you can justify a Floodgate here. 0 dislikes. Wow, I'm shocked. He is taking a very bold direction here.
End board.
I should be the first one.
It's a very complicated puzzle to solve, and not everyone is going to figure out how to do it. But stun decks rely on Floodgates as basically their only puzzle piece that they're presenting to the opponent. And if you can find a line to shove down that deep fissure-shaped hole, then stun decks really don't have any kind of follow-up to it. It's like being handed a one-piece puzzle to solve. If you can solve it, they have no other tricks up their sleeve. And I can basically hear the furious typing of keyboards right now of people saying, bro literally just said draw the out, which is kind of true to a degree, but it's a little more complicated than that. Even if you have to go down a suboptimal line or just freestyle some combos, generally decks do have a high density of ways to play around a variety of different Floodgates. It's usually not enough to end the game right there, but a lot of decks can put themselves in a winning position against Floodgates. It's not as uncommon as you would think. And with a lot of these stun decks, they just don't have any follow-up. If you break through with even the tiniest...
If you can get into a situation where you can out a Floodgate after grinding through like a bunch of like different, you know, loopholes you tried to get through in order to like make your deck do this weird play in this niche game state that doesn't happen that often, and then eventually you out the Floodgate like we did there with like the Flamberge pass after scaling the tribute monster, preventing the lose from turn from... Actually no, that's a different Floodgate I'm thinking about. Then yeah, sure, I guess that could be maybe moderately interesting, but the reality is mathematically and statistically, how many games involving Floodgates do really just boil down to, did you draw the out? You know? I don't think it's anywhere close to like less than half, you know?
Of simple boards, then you're probably going to beat the stun player. And this is all if you even get there. The deck is just inconsistent and bricky. You're basically playing a gamba for the coin flip and then rolling the dice again to see if you got a hand that's more playable than just Fenrir in a dream. Then, if you finally get good RNG on those first 2 rolls, you still have to make a 3rd roll to see if your Floodgates are actually going to be useful against your opponent. Like if I set up in a Rise Heart and my opponent is playing Exo Sister or God forbid the Kashtira Mirror, then a Rise Heart is basically demoted to a bad Mirror Jade. But maybe it's just my deck choice, right? Because after all, Kashtira Primite has a lot of points where generic
Oof, I don't know, man. This is rough. Like, yeah, I mean, there are decks that thrive under Floodgates. Okay, so we're talking about a Rise Heart is bad into these specific decks because they don't care about the Floodgate as much, and it's like, yeah, like the card exists for no reason. Like it's just there, it's bricked in this matchup, and it's auto win in this matchup under the right circumstances, most circumstances, and it's like, what did we produce in terms of puzzle gameplay, right? Because he glazed Josh at the start and talked about how Josh had this amazing, like, you know, view of the design of a duel being set up as this puzzle that you have to solve. What are the Floodgates contributing to that puzzle, like, solving, right? Like, that's the
eruption
thing.
can stop it.
More
and that's not
often
really
than
in
not,
line
it's
with the
nothing.
strengths of traditional
And
stuff.
yes, I understand the example of like, well, sometimes you can circumvent the Floodgate by doing these weird plays, etc., etc. But I think those are very few and far between, and they just don't happen as often as you would hope them. You would hope for them to. Let him speak. I'm going point by point.
Stun decks. A part of what makes a traditional stun deck so alluring is the fact that all of these hand traps are basically bricks when you just do Inspector Border set 4 pass. So let's try this again, but using as little activations as possible to not give our opponent any opportunity to deal with us. And I'm not
That right there is peak, by the way.
gonna sugarcoat it, it's honestly still just bad. Because the same issues still pop up. You're only presenting 1 or 2 pieces of a puzzle for your opponent to solve. And if they do solve it, then the deck has no plan B, so you're just cooked. And like I said, there's very few games I've...
Right, exactly. So Floodgate, Turbo, Stun decks, etc. aren't good. We know that. If you do actually solve the puzzle, then, you know, they just flop, right? But you can go to a get kicked in the balls bar for fun at the weekend with your friends. And you all go in and you're like, okay, I'm here to get kicked in the balls. Can I order 2 get kicked in the balls, please? So they, you know, they present your sort of this nice, very well built, like strong Russian woman comes over. She gives you your get kicked in the balls service. And then you're like, and then you leave and you're like, okay, all right, awesome. But the thing is, like, that wasn't a fun experience. No one wanted to, like, be taking part in that, right? So having this puzzle to solve, it's like, yeah, there's a puzzle to solve and it exists and it's there, and then if you solve it, you're done. But like, I didn't want to be in that situation. That was not fun. That wasn't, you know, I think my analogy worked perfectly there, actually.
Played with the deck where a Floodgate just outright prevented an opponent from playing. Did they have to go down an awkward line? Yeah, sure. But when I see them starting to play into it and finding that awkward line that works, I basically just have to sit there with my fingers crossed and hope a Solemn or an Iron Thunder is going to be enough to stop them. And spoilers, like half the time, it's usually not enough to stop them. And honestly, I think that does say a lot about Floodgates. The fact that they need to be backed by Solemn Brigade because the opponent can still produce a threat under them shows that these Floodgates are just not as auto-win as people portray them as. And genuinely, I think people blow Floodgates a little bit out of proportion. So then here's the next question. If Floodgates are just okay, then why did Rose Whip need to get banned? And this...
Okay, before he moves on to the next point, because there's no way he can justify engine Floodgates like this, right? Surely, Clueless? Just talking about more like the stun deck stuff. So, okay, let me address the elephant in the room. Once upon a time, you know, I said like stun decks and, you know, these garbage decks are fine or whatever. This is mostly from the perspective of like anyone should be able to beat anyone as a design philosophy in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I believe theoretically exists. Why do Floodgates all exist? Does Konami think Floodgates are good gameplay? Do they genuinely think that summoning a barrier statue or a fossil dyna is fun and interesting and healthy? No, they don't. But there's this concept of like this whole like anime-esque theme of drawing the right card in the right moment and having the heart of the cards at your side to be able to produce a crazy woohoo moment, right? Everyone has watched the YCS feature where the opponent drops a shifter and everyone goes wild. Everyone has seen a YCS final where the opponent flips Eradicator and rips 6 cards out the opponent's hand. it's not fun or interesting for the players, but from a viewer perspective and from the entertainment aspect, it's still like cinema. It might not be entertaining in the sense that, wow, this is really cool and back and forth. It's hype in the sense that it's like a spectacle, right? So I think that's like basically the main reason Floodgates exist. It's to create like these moments that you can feel like you're powerful by ripping the right card at the top of your deck. It gives, you know, not as great players a chance to win games against better players if they believe hard enough, etc., etc. I know that sounds all kind of crazy and stuff. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying it's correct or that it's good. I'm just saying I theoretically think that's why Floodgates exist, because you have to come up with give me a reason why Floodgates are still in the game. Why are all the barrier statues still in Master Duel? Why are all the Floodgates still in the game? You have to provide a reason. I'm giving a reason. It might not be a good reason or a perfect reason or a smart reason, but it is a reason that I think fits the mold for why they exist. Okay, so that is, you know, that part of the video explained away, hopefully. Second part was like, you know, this whole concept of the puzzle being solved and stuff like that. I think really it just all comes down to the fact that solving a puzzle is fun if the puzzle you're solving is a fun puzzle. Solving the puzzle of like playing against a branded board that resolved 4 cards in the graveyard in the end phase, that set this, that search this, that summon this, and then you have to figure out how like my opponent's non-targeting banish is going to interact with my targeting ability that forces it. Like, that is an interesting puzzle to solve. My opponent has lose a turn and I don't have Fallen in the Virtuous in my hand. How do I out this? Like, that's not like that interesting of a puzzle. And some games are interesting where you have to solve that simple puzzle of, okay, there's a barrier statue on the field. How do I out this? It's like, you know, some of those games are interesting, but most of them really just boil down to binary pass-fail situations of draw the out. And that's not fun gameplay, I would argue.
To nobody's surprise, comes down to the fact that it's searchable in a non-dedicated stun deck. And if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I actually don't think Rose Whip was ever legitimately good in Cool Tune. It was just kind of a crutch, but I feel like ending on the Rose Whip just made your end board overall weaker in return for being able to beat Sky Striker and Radiant Typhoon. And I'd rather just have a more versatile end board.
This is definitely spoken as a Master Duel player, because having that one card option in the side deck that exists to be able to just completely shut down certain matchups is why, like, that was so powerful, right? Like, you know, if you play, like, a best-of-3 game, and, like, the Master Duel players sometimes forget this. I know, crazy concept, but you don't have to play every card all the time forever. If there's a new deck in Master Duel, you don't have to main deck all of the outs that beat it because you're in best-of-1, okay? TCG players know this. That's why they have a side deck, right? So having that option to bring into these matchups is backbreaking, right? So yeah, Rose Whip probably is bad into some matchups, but you just wouldn't play it into those matchups. So we should delete the side deck? Yep.
Or no, sue me. But having that
My
option
YCS
to
champion
search a
says you
floodgate
should,
off
so
the
yeah.
end of a combo is usually what gets these floodgates banned. Like, stun decks
I'll ban 1,000 floodgates before I let Sanctifier die.
aren't getting stun cards banned. Actually, I don't think a stun deck
Low-key, kind of based. I like Sanctifier.
ever got any stun card banned. It's always been other decks getting floodgates banned. Which begs another question. If this floodgate that hasn't been relevant for basically a decade suddenly becomes bannable because of Cool Tune, is it Cool Tune Q's fault or is it Rose Whip's fault? And when you really stop to
Both, right? It's both. Look at plant combo deck, whatever bullshit that Jess like topped with and won EUWCQ with, I think. She played Rose Whip. And that's a completely different deck from Colton. Whole other archetype. But that deck abused it, and this deck also was going to abuse it. Like, if Colton eventually gets rotated out of the format like they always do with all of the archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh!, then Rose Whip would probably fall out of favor. But then it's like, well, some other deck in the future will probably just find some stupid DM staple printed in 2009 that just is broken and powerful and auto wins games, right? So, yeah, the floodgate is the problem, but it's being facilitated by the archetype. So, when is anyone ever going to play Rose Whip in a fun, interesting context? Like, just ban it. Like, you know? I don't know. Like, is that controversial?
think about it, it's actually Q's fault, right? That same interaction that got Rose Whip onto the field is now just being used to search an Ash Blossom. We removed the Floodgate, but that same interaction is still adding another puzzle piece that the opponent needs to solve by the end of the end
What are
board.
these memes?
And again, personal opinion, it's probably just because of the decks I play, but I would much rather play against the Naturia Rose Whip than an extra Ash Blossom that they just added to their hand. But understand.
It depends. It depends. It just depends. Like, that's...
Understandably, Konami can't just hit their new decks on the ban
I
list,
mean, what I
so
like.
Rose Whip goes away. But here's the thing, with Rose Whip being gone, the puzzle didn't get easier to solve. It just changed a little bit. And unless you were a Radiant Typhoon player or a Sky Striker player, the Rose Whip wasn't actually doing anything that made...
Sorry, this is not an MBT stream. I do not tolerate this kind of language, please.
Cool Tune easier or harder to beat. Like when you see people losing their minds every single day about Floodgates online, it's pretty easy to get sucked into that mindset that Floodgates are bad, skillless auto-win buttons. And while they might be skillless, they're definitely not auto-win. Floodgates are just an entirely feast or famine strategy that relies on you going first and then hoping that the Floodgates are enough to just...
I think if you were going to justify Floodgates, the angle that I took, or I take, you know, obviously I'm going to say that because it's my opinion and I'm me, I think just makes so much more sense, right? Like, I really do think, like, Floodgates existing as a... because of reasons that are out with gameplay and more to do with, you know, spectacle, entertainment, marketing. Like, I think that makes more sense than... Well, it's not that bad. Because, like, ultimately, so far, this whole video is really just kind of boiled down to, well, it's not that bad, guys. You can sometimes beat Floodgates. Like, that's really the crux of this entire argument. It's just, if you could boil this whole video down into one sentence, it's, well, Floodgates aren't that bad. Sometimes you can beat them. It's like, yeah, sure. You know? But that's not, like, fun. Sometimes you can beat Royal Magical Library Exodia FTK because the deck is bad, it loses to any hand trap, but it's not a fun deck to play against. It's not a fun puzzle to solve, right? Like, it still just sucks. Like,
prevent the opponent
sucks
from
for everyone.
attempting to break the board
I
out.
have to play a shitty deck with like a 7% win rate. And I have to play a non-game against it. I either stomp them into the ground because they lost the coin flip or I drew the right hand trap, or they whiff their combo, right? Like, do you know what I mean? So it's just like, it's just not fun. It's just not fun. But I get why it exists. I get why, and I appreciate why it exists. Because occasionally, it's just epic and cool to watch someone just flip a Floodgate in the final of a YCS, and the crowd cheers and goes crazy, and it creates like a moment. It creates like a cultural like moment that people talk about and mention, and it becomes part of the community memes and all that kind of stuff, right? It doesn't, but I'll respect your opinion. All right, I'm gonna draw something right now, and you tell me what you think when you see it. All right, and tell me what this moment is. Oops. I can already see people guessing it. Yeah, It's the Jesse Shifter incident. Yep, got a couple of people saying it. Is Shifter a fun card? Is Shifter cool? Is Shifter awesome? No, but everyone remembers this moment. Even a garbage drawn MS Paint 30-second cool like thing that I've just whipped up now is culturally relevant. Everyone remembers that moment. It wasn't even a stream. It was just a feature match, a written blog post, and people remember it, right? So Floodgates are good, quote unquote, for that reason, right? Because it creates this like talking point, this like incident that people look back on. And again, I'm not, to clarify, because I know comment section will probably rip me. Of course, Ray says yes, by the way. His opponent, who dropped the shifter. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm not saying I like that. I'm just, again, if you disagree with my point here, then give me an alternative answer. Why do floodgates exist? Answer that question for me. I think it's because of the reasons I suggested. If you have a different reason, I'd love to hear it. I'm just saying what I think the logical reason is. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying it's a good argument. But there has to be a reason why they exist, right? Intelligence diff? Oh, you think someone at Konami just has like 27 IQ and they're like, well, I think this card is good.
Right. But if your opponent basically sticks anything with more than 2,000 attack...
Ancient Orgasm! I love that card. I almost topped a regional playing this.
...back into play, the stun deck player is basically going to lose to beatdown. And from what I've seen, even with multiple floodgates online, the opponent can usually still find a way to threaten your board. They're not out of the game because you flip.
I agree with your reasons, but I don't agree that it's a healthy reason. Exactly. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just giving our reason, because you have to have our reason why something exists, okay?
Flipped up 2 floodgates and shoved the middle finger in their face. And for what it's worth, I think
I really want to read
you
that.
flipped
When you set 5 floodgates and they go straight to battle.
up 2 floodgates and shoved the middle finger in their face. And for what it's worth, I think floodgates are
haven't seen that pick in
Yu-Gi-Oh
years.
cards. They're not completely hot garbage, but they aren't this boogeyman that's just gonna steal a game like everyone was letting me believe either. Floodgates just simply change the puzzle that needs to be solved, but it doesn't make the puzzle unsolvable. And like, here's the thing too, if the stun player draws the nut, then yeah, you're probably not breaking that board. But if any deck draws the nut, you're probably not breaking their board.
He needs to, like, get with the Gen Z lingo. Drawing the nut is really different of what that means versus drawing the nuts, plural. Okay, like, that's a different, like... that is a whole other different word.
It just feels worse when stun is the one drawing
All floodgate players, we hate skill and fun.
the nut. Now, there's one...
Honestly, we could just spend an entire, like, afternoon just looking at all the memes in his video instead of, like, actually watching the video. This picture is the origin of the phrase, by the way, the more you know. The elephant in the room. Oh, well, there you go.
Very obvious elephant in this room that I need to bring up because I just haven't addressed it yet. And that's my personal bias on this because I play a best of 1 format. In best of 1, there's a risk with running floodgates where you're going to run into a matchup where the floodgates aren't going to work. But in best of 3 with a side deck, that's just not.
The Sky Striker starter deck. Welcome back. I'll side anti-spell for it. Oh my god, these are so bad. Where did you find these?
Going to happen. These floodgates become so...
I can't stop looking at these memes now. So anyway, I activate Chain Lancia. Pod agreed. That's the ruling.
over bullets in the side deck, where you just bring them in for game 2 and 3 to completely shut out a certain deck. This application of Floodgates is a lot more toxic, and I agree that it opens up the debate a lot more because there's a lot of things you have to consider when these Floodgates are being used as silver bullets in the side deck. And as much as I would love to discuss this, honestly, it just kind of comes down to not my format, not my problem. Look, I'm sorry. I know people don't want to hear that, but...
You know what? I respect that. But Apples, what about best of 3? What about side decking format? What about when you could just side deck? Not my problem. I don't give a fuck.
Realistically, like, I'm just not playing paper that often. I'm mostly playing Master Duel because that's what's convenient for me.
Only
and
good
Konami
opinion so far.
recognizes that they're 2 separate formats as well with the separate ban lists. So I'm going to look at these cards from the perspective of a best of 1 format instead of best of 1 and best of 3. And I'm sure when I start playing paper, I'm going to eat those words. But for now, we're going to leave it at that. But let's be real. For every card game I've ever played, the side deck is just a bunch of silver bullets. So, like, this is nothing really new anyway. For the stun players who's watching this video, I'm about to throw you a bone here because you guys have been getting ragged on this whole video.
Brothers and sisters are natural enemies like stun players in burn decks or stun players in combo decks or stun players in OTKs or stun players and other stun players. What does a stun mirror match look like? I don't want to know.
Video, and you've been honestly getting ragged on for like a decade and a half at this point. Because since most Floodgates can actually be played around, stun decks take a little...
Can you stop, dude? Like, that most floodgates can be played around, dog. Like, you can't believe the words you're saying right now.
More brain cells than you
Then it wouldn't be a floodgate at that point. It wouldn't be a good floodgate. I don't know, man.
actually think. You have no layered interaction,
that monkey's
no
going
follow-up,
crazy.
and honestly very little to do
He's not
outside of
wrong.
those.
I mean, look, floodgates are most egregious in best of 3, which is the angle I'm coming from. But no, he is wrong. Like, yes, like he literally is wrong. The whole point of like a floodgate is that it auto wins a certain matchup, and sometimes that matchup is every matchup. You know, if it's powerful enough, right? It's Fossil Dino with protection, just Shifter versus 90% of decks, right? Like.
Floodgates. So identifying where you need to point your limited forms of interruption actually does take a fair bit of knowledge.
Brother in Christ,
not just of your
MST
deck, but
exists?
of the
Okay.
game as a whole, because
Radiant
you really need to
Typhoon
know
player.
where to
Spotted.
stop these decks on these very niche backwards lines. And like I said, the deck has no follow-up either. You're basically relying on a top deck every turn like Yugioh himself. And when you have such a small pool of cards to
These
actually
monkey
work with,
like memes are insane.
because nothing in stun really searches nothing else, managing your resources becomes a lot more important. And there's quite a bit of skill in managing your card economy in a deck that doesn't produce additional value. And that's it. That's the only
I think that's him editing the video. This video sounds good. Ship it.
in a deck that doesn't produce additional value. And that's it. That's the only compliment
Where'd you
you
get all
guys
these
get.
monkey gifts?
I stand
Those are
with you guys.
classics.
I don't think you guys deserve to get deleted from existence, but I'm not standing with you in solidarity. I'm like way over here. I don't think you guys deserve all of this hate, but at the same time, I don't really vibe with your ideas either. But what I can tell you, stun players, is that the next time I queue against one of you, you can bet your ass that I'm going to be playing into your board. I now know how fragile your deck really is. And if you guys got to this point in the video, why not consider liking and subscribing? It goes a long way to help small creators like me, and each and every one of you makes a huge impact. Your support, from the active commenters to the lurkers, all mean the world to me. And I know floodgates are a hot topic in this game, so if a floodgate enjoyer decides to come out of the closet and comment on this video, be a little nice to them, because their deck is probably not working as well as you would think. And as always,
I don't think people hate floodgates because of stun decks. It's more when it's part of an already established and strong board. Back when I started Macedo, I used to play E-Twin Fiendsmith and ended with Trouble Sunny, Muckraker pointing to Griffin with sometimes a Caesar. He kind of glossed over that completely with the Rose Whip thing, by the way. Like, I guess I didn't talk much about it either, but like, the worst thing about floodgates is when a meta deck plays it. And that's one of the biggest arguments and counters that people seem to try and give in defense of floodgates. It's, well, your wombo combo 10 negate disruption insane crazy deck is basically just a floodgate with extra steps, right? Well, it's like, yeah, but like two things can be true at the same time. Also, what do you argue when that meta deck plays a floodgate? What is your argument there? Do you guys remember like some of the most egregious examples when Dragon Link used to set up like multiple Omni Negates and Buster Dragon equipped, locking you out your extra deck? What's your justification there for that floodgate? You know what I mean? If you make a Dingirsu first with any 2/8s, then spawn Last Warrior to clear your board, it gets prevented by the Dingirsu detaching an Exema. Stop giving him ideas. It is really not really fun to play against floodgates. After watching the video, I felt called out. No floodgate was ever banned for the floodgate deck. Mystic Mine. Did he say that in the video? I must have missed that point. One of the funniest matchups I had at locals against Stunbird was when I was on Glad Beasts. It was completely funny to get through this stuff, make Claudius and his you get 2 battle phases effect, just have like one monster that you could tag out. Okay, yeah, Glad Beast doesn't care about floodgates, true. Floodgates are rules that a player sets for one or both players to limit actions. In a game that has a prominent problem where the going first player already has too much advantage, there are legitimate game balance and design reasons for them to exist. They are extremely difficult to design well, and when a floodgate is not effective, it feels like it does absolutely nothing. It becomes a wasted resource that leads to game losses. Right. So that's exactly his point, was that, oh, well, sometimes the floodgates are bad. But I would counter that by saying, yeah, sometimes floodgates are bad, but it's also not fun. That wasn't a fun game for anyone. Anyway, well, let's go do a meme review. This is the hottest take video from an applesauce take we've seen, but oh boy. Just be nice in the comments is all I ask.